Hello everyone, today I'm gonna talk about Izba, Russian peasant house. I chose this topic because I like learning about the different rituals that peasants did. Also, it wasn't that easy for them to find a place to construct a house. These houses were created following basic principles of log construction, log used in Russia for all kinds of building, like in town as well as village. In Russia, they had a lot of traditions, and this kind of architecture was one of them, because this tradition in architecture persisted the longest and flourished into the greatest variety of forms in the European far north. This region in particular was lucky because it did escape the physical and cultural disruption of Mongol occupation. The occupants of this region were peasants who were not serfs and who only paid a land tax to the state. As we can see in the picture, wood was plentiful. While in Russia's central, a fence enclosed the peasant's house and a southern agricultural building, in the north stables, cattle shells, hat lofts, and agricultural storage rooms were often joined in a single roof with the family's living space. The combination of a house within a covered yard made sense because of the harsh climate. The size of the izba depended on the size of the families and their wealth, like a nuclear or multi-generational family or a set of brothers with their wives and children. Sometimes they join together the living quarters with the more extensive covered farmyard, making the shape of a rectangle, or the farming and living sections meet at the right angle, forming an L. In the two-story koshel or basket house, the ridge of the roof marked the divider between the living quarters and the agricultural space. The koshel house had an asymmetrical roof, a steep, short slope covering the house proper, and a longer slope stretching over the enclosed farmyard. In Russian, the presence of a stove was important because it defined an habitation. Also, the word izba is related to the word stopit, that means to heat, referring both to a structure as a whole and any hidden room with it. There were different types of house. A simple house that had only one multi-purpose room that was used for cooking, other domestic tasks, eating, and sleeping, while in a large house, they could have two or more multi-purpose rooms. In a smoky izba, the smoke from the stove escaped through a slit. These smoky houses were constructed until the mid-19th century. The creation of the war. In Russia, creating a house was like creating the war. For them, building a house means constructing a cosmos, because they wanted an ordered and a sacred space, and for that they needed a special ritus. They couldn't build a house everywhere they wanted, because an invisible dangers, like a place where a road had once run, where a house had burned down, or where a bad house had stood. One way that they used to know if a property was good was using bread or grain. They used similar care while picking living wood. They cut the trees down in the fall and then allowed them to season over the winter. Because building a house was a common effort, peasants gave food and drink to all the helpers. The first round was when the first interlocking row of logs was set in place. The second round was after raising the matista, that was the main ceiling. The third round was after putting the topmost roof beam in place, and the last meal was after completing the building. Before they started just doing feasts, they used to sacrifice animals. They used to put horse skulls and chicken heads under the long frameworks of houses in a medieval Novgorod. This practice derived from ancient beliefs that the war emerged from the body of a slain human or animal. Capping the main roof beam and crowning the front gable was the konjok, that means little horse, often carved in the shape of horse's head, or sometimes into two horses' heads facing in opposite direction, or a bear. The konjok was identified with the house as a whole, a sacrificial creature imparting its life to the structure. The archaeologist Rybnikov believed that the konjok could also be a solar symbol. Under the konjok, there is another solar symbol that is decorative board that typically display a rosette. On either side, cardboards covering the ends of the eaves also bore solar discs. These three circles represent the sunrise, the sun as its zenith, and sunset. To these symbols, the sun lent its life-giving and protecting powers to the house. The house needed protection from malign forces, especially the doorway, so Peasants used the Puri talisman of sacred writing under it. Inside the house, the most important parts were the stove and the red corner. The red corner was the income corner and functioned as the domestic altar, also was considering a primary masculine realm. The stove signified for cooking as well as for heating. In folk speech and rituals, the stove could stand for the house as a whole. The stove corner was called the woman's corner because women cooked, spooned, and did other work in the stove. While the men set the household income or incomes in place, the women did some rituals for the stove, like lighting the fire for the first time or transferring coals from the old stove to the new one. Sometimes she started preparing a pot of kosher in the old house and finished it in the new one. In the article Peasant Life, they mentioned that kasha is a cookbook with groats that was a daily dish in the Russian army. Another symbolic and important part of the house was the matista, that was the main ceiling beam. The matista as the stove could stand in for the building as a whole rituals. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the domo boy, or as he liked to be called, grandfather or master. This spirit watched over the house from his favorite house under or behind the stove, under the floorboards, or up in the attic. The Domo boy had close affinities with the animals when earliest time was thought to lend spirit to the house. And that's it for me. Thank you everyone.